Hi everybody, it's me again, the same girl that you've been seeing for the past few videos, sculpting and casting the same exact sun. Now, I know the last video went a little quick through the casting and mold process. So what I wanted to do for this video is show you the dyeing of the resin portion, since that's where we left off last video, when I said, oh yeah, and I don't have any dye because the acrylic paint mixing into the solution to make the white sun, a yellow sun as a base color for painting, did not work. I'm assuming that is because acrylic is water-based, and unfortunately, I don't know about epoxy resin where people said that that would work, but the urethane resin that I have, it was like oil and water. The acrylic basically just turned into little flakes in the part A solution and would not mix in literally at all. So acrylic we can just X off the list. That meant that I had to go to Hobby Lobby and pick up some more materials. Now, to be honest, when I went into YouTube and I was researching dyeing urethane resin, I did not find that much. There was one gentleman that just straight up skipped to the part where he had already dyed his resin, and I'm like, what did you use? So I'm going to show you what I used. This is the big thing here, this Castin Craft Opaque Pigment Concentrate. They have some other stuff that like creates a rose gold color, but it's important to remember that is for the clear epoxy resins. And then I do think it warns you on the bottle that it's going to create a more pastel color if you use it with a white urethane resin like I have. In other words, you're going to have to use more of the solution to create color. But you have to be careful with that, because if you dilute your part A and part B urethane too much with this stuff, then it will not cure correctly. And I think it says don't use more than like 1 ounce of this for 8 ounces of the resin, which to me sounds like, why would you ever use that much in the first place? I read something else online that said don't use 1/4 ounce of the dye per 8 ounces of resin, which you can tell in the video that I'm going to show you made me a little more stingy with it. So anyway, I got yellow and red because I wanted a kind of orangey yellow color, sort of a golden color, if you will. And on that note, I decided to try out Pearl X, and this is a really beautiful metallic powder. I know people use this for all kinds of things, including like calligraphy ink, just basically anything that you want to be this beautiful, brilliant gold color. Now, when I mixed it into the part A in the video, you'll see it produced a desirable effect, but unfortunately did not work for me. Nevertheless, I'm going to show you the footage because this seems to be a sort of learn with me process. And I'm just being honest with you guys. I also got from Hobby Lobby while I was there this metallic gold enamel. It's not really mixed right now, but it was only $1.99. And so I think that'll be pretty for details on the sun. I also learned a new trick before recording this video that involved not using mold release and instead using cornstarch, which I'll tell you about. But in any case, those are the developments for this video. And with all that said, I guess I'll show you how it went.
The first trick I want to show you is, instead of using mold release, which is oil-based and may potentially interfere with your ability to paint the surface once you get it out, I have a cornstarch method that I learned from a channel called Brick in the Yard Mold Supply in his video Painting Tips for Casting Resin. There he advised not to use mold release and instead to use a light dusting of cornstarch, which not only protects your mold, which we very much want, but also creates an extra matte textured surface for paint to adhere to once you take your cast out and are ready to paint it. I'm hoping to kind of skip the process of sanding and priming altogether, so this was really great for me. And you can see I just added it in there and tried to make it as thin as possible without any little clusters, because those will get stuck in your resin. Here I am beginning the dyeing process with the resin. You can see I'm using a lot more yellow than I am the red. Now, it's important to point out that I am only working with the part A portion of the solution. It kind of goes without saying, if I added the part B and tried to mix it, I would have barely enough time to get the color right. So I'm just being cautious. I also added just the teeniest, tiniest amount of red, as you can see, because it is much more potent than the yellow part of the dye. Make sure you're wearing gloves because I was beginning to stain my hands. I'm moving on to the Pearl X. This is highly experimental, but you can see as I'm adding it in, it produces a really beautiful, shimmery, swirly effect that to me is very sun-like, and I was really hoping it would work out in my favor. However, because it's clear right now is the only reason it was actually showing up. You'll see when I cast it that it completely turns back to this matte color and also completely opaque. What I just pointed out to you in the instructions is that in the previous videos, I was adding part A and part B in equal solutions, when really, if you're doing it by volume, that works, but by weight, it's different. It would only be 9 parts of part B to 10 parts of part A. Now look at that, so pretty as it is, and then boom, it turns a completely different pale, opaque color. Nevertheless, just gonna check out and see how it worked. I was pleased to see the cornstarch worked really well. However, it did not get dark enough, not nearly dark enough. So I decided I was probably being a little too stingy with the dye, and here is try number 2. Luckily, I had just enough resin left to do this part of the process. I'm doing an even layer of the cornstarch with a little fan brush. In the video for Brick in the Yard Mold Supply, he used pressurized air. I didn't have a can of pressurized air, so that was my method. Worked out fine. And then here I am being a little more precise about the weight at this point, once I found out there was technically less of part B in weight than part A. I don't know that this made a huge difference for me. It worked out fine in the first couple casts, but, you know, better to be careful. You can see I created a much, much darker solution than I had previously. It's a burnt orange color, but it's going to cure in a much lighter color, as I had already found out. Funnily enough, when I've been casting with latex before, it's the opposite effect. Latex turns a much, much, much darker color. But I guess that's just kind of the nature of the beast with this resin. I'm trying to, again, even out the mold because, like I told you in my previous videos, it was a little lopsided, and here we are. It turned out nice color, and I'm pretty happy.
Okay, so this is now where we're at. It is definitely a very pastel orange color. I wouldn't describe it as golden, but it's as close as I'm gonna get for right now, unless I create another cast that has more dye in it, which honestly I'm not interested in doing because I think this is a really beautiful base color. And I'm not mad at how it turned out. Also, I don't know if you can kind of see this, but the little bit of powdery residue has definitely made it more matte. And I am compelled to believe that I no longer need to sand it in order to paint it. Next video, you will see me try that theory out. So stay tuned. I hope to see you next video. And as always, thanks so much for watching.